Hey guys, what's up? It's Jasmine over at PrettyBrown&Nerdy, and I am here with the Night Sky Prince, Ryan Johnson himself. What's up, Ryan?
Hello.
How's it
Hey,
going?
you guys. How you doing?
How's COVID treating you? Quarantine? You doing all right? It's
Oh
hard out
man,
here.
about as it is super hard. All I got is myself and my work and games. That's it.
Hey, well, sometimes that's good though. I mean, but people expect us to like dive into all of that. But I know for a lot of people, it's been hard kind of like navigating this weird period that we're in, these dark times that we're in, and trying to
Right.
remain creative at the same time. Because, people are like, oh, well, now you can just fully engross yourself in your work and it's going to be fine. You'll put out like tons of
No.
content. And it's like, y'all, like we still have our mental health and all kinds of crazy
Mm,
things that we need to like figure out and adjust during this too. So it's like it doesn't quite work like that, but I appreciate the incentive that you're trying to make.
it really feels like being locked in the office.
Right.
That's really what it feels, especially like as a full-time content creator. Like normally whenever I'm done creating content for the day, I upload my video, whatever is going up. The first thing I do is I see what my friends are doing and I go out or I go to the gym and I go work out. And then, the last few hours before I go to bed, I have a couple hours, I play games.
Yeah.
And now it's just been like, I can't go to the gym. I can't go out with friends. So it's just like whenever I'm not working on content, I'm just playing games. And I'm just like, oh man, I'm getting kind of flabby and I'm just like sitting here all day and I'm just like, this isn't great. Uh, it sounds great, and for the first few weeks, it was awesome, man. I caught up on everything. I beat Persona 5 Royal. 120 hours of my life I'll never get back. I
Dang.
beat I beat I beat more games right now than I probably have like
Ever
ever.
like getting caught
Yeah.
up on your whole backlog and
Oh
everything.
my god. Like I'm halfway done with Xenoblade. I'm going through the World Ends with You final mix right now. I'm just like
Hey.
everything that I've wanted to like go and like play, like I'm doing it right now. So it's good in that sense. I'll tell you that.
That's awesome. Well, now that we're diving into this, the main subject and category for this nerd talk is basically centering around everything content creation and what entails being a content creator and being on YouTube. And, you're always someone that I've greatly admired for your drive and everything that you're doing on YouTube right now. But for the audience that might not know or be aware of you, let's start with a little bit of an introduction.
Well, I'm the Night Sky Prince on YouTube, and basically what I do is I make a bunch of JRPG related videos, primarily focused on the Final Fantasy series, but I do a whole bunch of other content for other series as well. And so the thing about me is that I tend to make maybe 3 to 5 videos, somewhere in that range per week. I make a lot of videos. And the way that I'm able to do that is that usually my videos are 5 to 7 minutes long. Sometimes I'll go off, like I just made like a Persona 5 Royal video, and that video was like 14 minutes. Sometimes you'll get stuff like that, but normally I'm like constantly uploading and I'm constantly doing a bunch of like fan interaction and stuff like that. So that's one of the things that kind of separates my channel, and that's basically what I do on top of running a community called Ultima Square Enix Plus JRPGs, where everyone can sort of have the discussion about all the games that I'm talking about on the channel without necessarily having to have me facilitate that discussion nonstop. So,
And so, what piqued your interest into content creation? Like, how did you get into it? I know this isn't your first rodeo with YouTube.
yeah.
So what piqued your interest into getting into it as a whole?
So, very funny. Like, I've tried YouTube maybe like 3 times before I settled on this current channel. Like, originally, I thought like maybe I wanted to do something like comedy, right? But like comedy and like skits and stuff like that is actually very weird on YouTube. And due to the way monetization works nowadays, you're actually very limited in what you can actually do and say. And so it puts like a lot of creative restrictions on it. And also making that kind of type of content very regularly was very hard. And so I would try and then I'd lose motivation and shift out of it. And then I'd try and then shift out of it again. And then so this time I decided I was going to do something different. It was around the time when I had just dropped out of college. Um, I didn't really have a
Hey.
plan. I did not have a plan. I don't necessarily recommend that everyone does this, but
Yeah, no.
this is how it worked for me.
That's why you always have to
um,
preface it by that. It's like, I don't
yeah,
recommend it, but here's how it worked
yeah.
for me.
Yeah. Do not just say that, hey,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
no.
drop out and start a YouTube channel, because
Mm-mm.
for most
Mm-mm.
people it may not work that way. I was also working though at the time too, which is also an important thing to keep in mind as a pharmacy technician. And so, but I wasn't happy at school at all. I hated it. I was a computer science major, and I was going there, going through the motions, but it just was not hitting for me at all. And then I realized one day that I was like, man, like, just like even if I graduate, I still feel like I'm not going to be happy. And I think at that point, that's when I
Mm.
realized it's like, man, even when I graduate and I get out of here, I'm still going to feel miserable. What's so then what's the point of continuing like continuing going to school and making myself more miserable? So at that point, I just is like, I'm not going anymore. And I was a senior too. I had like 7 classes left. So
That has to be
I could have
very
easily went.
scary, though, to
Yeah.
just make that kind of push out of nowhere, like, hey, I'm so close, but I just don't feel like
Right.
this is working for me. Did that cause you to have like any sort of fears or doubts about that? I mean, of course, I would think so, kind of
Right.
taking that step and, it's like, oh, what is my family going to think about this? Or, like, how are they going to feel about it? So, how was it like navigating through all of that?
Oh man, they kind of thought I went crazy. And I think I kind of did, but I just like broke from the stress. Like I legitimately couldn't handle it anymore. And I
Mm,
feared the result of me continuing more than I feared the result of me not continuing, you know?
mm,
So I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna do what's best for me. And during that time, I read a lot of books and I listened to like a lot of audiobooks. And I was just like, what all is there out there to do that people can do to make money that is outside of the traditional 9 to 5 grind, which is something that I detest. Like I can't even like describe to you how much I hate the very idea of the 9 to 5 grind. Just and so I had to get out of that, and I
mm.
had to figure out what I could do. And so I looked at YouTube again, and I said, look, after I get out of work every day, I have nothing but time on my hands. So I'm just gonna make a channel. And then I looked into gaming because I watched so many gaming channels. And I realized I was like, man, why am I consuming thousands of hours of this? And I'm not contributing to it myself. And all the previous ideas that I had didn't contribute to it. So I was like, what if I took the thousands of hours of media that I had been consuming and use the intelligence that I gained, whether that was through consciously observing what other creators were doing, or whether it was subconsciously picked up from me just looking at the videos and just sort of going in there and being like, you know, this is how I feel like it should be based on my reference experiences. And then I was like, what if I just start building that?
Yeah.
And sure enough, um, like my sixth video got like 300,000 views. My sixth. So it was like almost immediately a success, and I was growing like right out of the gate.
So, what drew you to making Final Fantasy content specifically? Because I know you've kind of ventured out and done some other videos like Persona, some other videos surrounding different studios and things like that. But why specifically Final Fantasy and Square Enix content?
So at the time, I had been watching other Final Fantasy creators, and of course, this is with no disrespect for them. There were just certain videos that I wanted to see, and they would never do them, right?
Mm,
So I decided, I was like, man, I was like, if I want to see this, I'm sure that there's other people who want to see this.
yeah.
So I decided to start doing content based on what I was wanting to watch. And from there, it just sort of took off because I sort of assumed that if there's people, if I'm like me, there are other people like me, and they're wanting that thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's just kind of, I think that's the way all marketing really should work. Make something that you want, and then from there, there's bound to be other people who are thinking the same way as you.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you said, like, okay, so you decided you wanted to make the Final Fantasy content specifically, and you posted the videos, and then you got your first big break with the views in your videos. And how was that like, starting this and getting to that where you made that video and got all those views? And what was that like for you? Did that really make you feel like, okay, I'm doing the right things and I need to keep continuing to do it this way? Or
Right.
did you still feel like, I see this is working, but I still want to experiment and try different things? Because I know when people see that one video is successful, they're like, okay, I'm just going to do everything this way because this is what's working. But did you
Right.
still try to experiment regardless of that?
Right. So with Final Fantasy, honestly, I think the biggest reason I had like the giant focus on it that I've had throughout the years is just because it was something that I could talk about without end.
Hmm.
Um, I think if you're going to pick a niche that you're going to go into, it has to be something that you can't find yourself being exhausted with. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself abandoning your niche and then hence abandoning your channel. And then there's going to be a lot of days where you wake up and you're going to be like, man, I really don't want to talk about this. I really don't feel the passion. So you have to feel something where every day you wake up and you're like, yeah, this is what I want. And so for me, JRPGs was the thing, Final Fantasy was the thing. And so it wasn't really that I was picking, like, I was like, oh, well, this just took off. It was more like I just put my passion into it. And then from there, people saw that passion. And then that's how it took off. And
Mm.
now it seems like I don't even necessarily have to put out like a Final Fantasy video. I put out videos on Near, for example. I put out videos on Persona, and all of those do just as well because at some point people begin to like you more than just um, what you're talking about. Especially once they've spent hundreds or thousands of hours watching your content, they become more invested in your passions. And at that point, you can kind of broaden your niche a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. And what is your process like for creating videos? Are your videos usually scripted, or do you just like, oh, I'm just gonna press record and go? Like, we're just gonna talk and I'm gonna edit it out, whatever I don't want.
Okay, so nowadays, I have a large variety of different videos that I do on the channel. If it's news videos, before all my news videos used to be scripted. Everything was scripted. So it was me writing anywhere from one page to like four or five, and I was doing that like all the time. Nowadays, my videos are not scripted for some of them, like any type of news videos, right?
Hmm.
But if it's anything where I need to like use the big brain, like I talked about that Persona 5 Royal video essay that I did. If it's something like that, and I'm talking for like 14 minutes straight, and the editing, I want the editing to be phenomenal and to really, really, really drive home a point. That's when I'm absolutely going to script everything. I'm absolutely going to make sure that everything is lined up the way that it's supposed to be. When I'm doing like news content and it's more like a daily upload for me, that's when um, it's mostly just me speaking, and then I edit out all my uhs and ums and all
Yeah.
my pauses and stuff like that, and I just make it flow. But for anyone who's new and starting, you absolutely need to do a script if you're going to talk about some of this new stuff because it's it's a chronic problem that I see new content creators have, where they try to get on camera and talk unscripted, and they fumble over their words. There's no structure to what they're saying. And if you're watching someone who's a new content creator, you're sort of making like a little small investment to see if this person is going to be worth your next few minutes, right? Because you
Hmm.
don't know if they are going to be. So you're kind of just trusting the unknown and hoping you get like a little gem out of it. And a lot of the times when those content creators talk, they don't have like the experience necessary to freely talk and make that coherent point. So if you're new to this, scripted, but you can wean off of it too.
Exactly. And I think it's like you said, finding what works, because a lot of times you're not really sure, what you're going to say when you get in front of the camera. So sometimes a script is great because it gives people who are starting out, that way to really fine tune and kind of streamline their content from the get go to draw the attention of an audience. And then once you're getting comfortable, because that's the main thing, is just creating, a situation to where you are comfortable in front of the camera, to where you can just
Mm,
get to that point where you can press record, and it's like you're so familiar with it that you can just start talking for however long, and you have tons of content you can edit and pick, throughout the video what you want to say and or what you want to keep. So yeah, definitely, I think that is something that even I had to learn myself, because
mm,
I think at first I thought that I'm like, I can just press record and I'm just gonna talk and do whatever, but I never really knew what exactly I was going to say. I was
yeah.
like, I know the main points that I want to hit, but how am I going to lead into every point and make it to where it sounds streamlined and where it's everything kind of flows naturally? And I can
Right.
edit it in a way where the pauses and things like that aren't so obvious anymore because everything seems streamlined. But I had to learn that as I went too, because I was one of those big anti script people. I was like, I don't need to write a script. I'm just
It's
going to
time
be,
consuming.
yeah, I'm like, I'm going to be natural and people are just going to like me for my authenticity. And it's like, you don't have, like, writing a script doesn't necessarily mean that you're not authentic. Sometimes it's just a way to gather your thoughts and really put your words in a way to where it's not just kind of jumbled and a mess, because people on YouTube are not friendly all the time. They will call you out on that too. If they notice it, they'll call you out in the comments, and then you'll be like, damn, like I knew
Right.
it, but I did it anyway. And now they don't call me out in the comments, and I'm looking a hot mess. It's a lot of pressure these days, especially with like all these new YouTubers coming around, and people streamlining their content. The quality is getting better every day, and it's like it's a lot of
Mm,
pressure to make yourself stand out, because a lot of times when people watch your videos, you only have maybe a few seconds to really grab someone's attention, like, or they're just gonna click off. They're gonna be like, ah, all right, I don't want to keep watching
yeah.
this. So it's really hard, because you're basically selling yourself. You got to sell yourself, sell your content, so that people are staying engaged, to where they feel like they want to watch the full 9-minute video. And
Mm,
it's a lot. But in knowing that, how there's so many creators online now, there's so many people making content. Despite all that, you were able to catch the attention of Square Enix. I believe they know who you
yeah.
are.
Yeah.
So what was
Yeah.
that? What was that like to hear your name mentioned in an E3 video from last year, and to know that the community managers and the social teams are watching your content and taking into account the things that you have to say, and that the Square actually is like, this guy is saying some important stuff and we need to keep watch on him. What was that experience like? Because I know for anyone that must feel, like, yeah, I made it. I did it. I'm here.
Oh man. So that was actually I hate to say it, that's probably one of the greatest moments in my life. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Man, actually, there's a pretty fun story behind it. So I think I was just checking into the Marriott hotel because
Hmm.
it was Akon, a popular, not the singer, a popular anime convention here in Dallas, and so I was just checking into my hotel, and then all of a sudden I look at my phone, and all these people are tagging me in this video that Tim Rogers uploaded from Kotaku, and they're like, "Hey man, you might want to watch this video." And I'm like, "Why?" And so I sit there and like watch this video, and like none of my friends are like even at the hotel yet. It's like literally just me like sitting like in the hotel room by myself, like watching this video on my phone. I'm like laying in the bed. I'm like, "The hell do they want me to watch this for?" Skimming through it, and then all of a sudden, like he mentions, like, "Hey, I want to give a shout out to the Night Sky Prince on YouTube," and I'm like, "Me?" And then the community manager is like, "Oh yeah, he's like been uploading like so many videos on like Final Fantasy VII Remake and all this other stuff," and they were talking about some stuff for my videos, and I was just like, I was like, this is real? This is happening? And I'm just like in this hotel room by myself, like screaming and like shouting. And I'm just like, I start pulling out bottles and I'm like, oh man, we are about to have the best con ever. We are like celebrating. And so I was just like unbelievably like glowing because that was like this huge moment of validation where, so at this point I have been doing this for like 2.5 years and I think it's been like 3 now. But I was just glowing. It is like this huge moment of validation for me to know that they're watching. And this is an important thing too about being a content creator is that these developers watch you.
Yes, they do.
And
As someone in the
they,
games industry, I can tell you straight up, we watch these videos. We do.
right. And yeah, and you actually you influence them. And so whenever you realize that, it honestly kind of it makes you feel kind of weird because you have like another pressure on you. It's one
Hmm.
thing to talk to somebody about something. It's like, hey, did you see such and such movie or play such and such game? And then just have that discussion there where maybe you take like a big crap on it or maybe you talk about how wonderful it was. But it's another thing, like knowing that the people behind it are actually like sitting like the booth behind you at the restaurant hearing that you talk about like that conversation about that product and it really shapes, especially like when you're giving certain criticism or certain praises, it really shapes an entirely different attitude that you approach
Hmm.
those things with, and it makes you realize how much influence you also have too for that fandom in the positive and the negative too. So you suddenly become a voice of fans or people invested in that product. And then when that happens, you feel an obligation to be authentic, and you also feel, especially whenever you're making criticisms, you want to make sure that they're well thought out and like well addressed. It shapes a lot of different
Hmm.
things whenever you go to make content, and that's sort of the responsibility that you have as a content creator, is to facilitate that discussion between developers and fandom, which is like an insane an insane thing to even think that we have that much power, because I couldn't even imagine influencing some of my favorite games growing up, and now that's something that we can actively do.
And I think that's great because Square, especially, hasn't always been that open to breaking down that boundary between the community and getting that insight. Like I from what I remember, especially with Square Enix, like if you told me that, Square Enix would be working with content creators and influencers and like their marketing and stuff, I'd be like, sure.
Yeah. Japanese companies, like in general, like the fact
Mhm.
that they are like this involved with content creators is almost insane, because Japanese companies, maybe like 5 to 10 years ago especially,
Yeah.
were very notorious for like, we don't care like how popular such and such like we're just gonna do like whatever we want, and even if millions of people like watch this person's content centered around our product, we're still going to do our own thing and not have any sort of connection with them, which is absurd, because if thousands to millions of people are watching a content creator who's making content about your product,
Mhm.
giving you free advertisement, really,
Right.
why wouldn't you want to
Why
work
not
with
eat it
them?
up, right?
Right, right.
Exactly.
Embrace it, right? And thankfully, most companies, Japanese ones included, Nintendo, Square, uh, they've come around full circle to basically allow these content creators to make content to the fullest, have that content monetized so that they can actually live off of what they're making, and even send them products or give them certain access to certain things, so that they can make that content for the people who are invested in that content creator and furthermore their products.
Mhm.
So,
And so, the person has created the content and they're being consistent. So I know the next question that some might have is, well, how does one get the attention of the brands and get to the point where they're getting noticed and they can get products and, that will allow them to make even more content? Some people might not be sure about how to exactly get the access. So, what are some tips that you can provide for that?
oh man, it it kind of is tedious, primarily because it's not just like you can necessarily go and hunt people out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of there's a lot of politics involved most of the time. But Twitter is probably one of the best resources that you can use.
Yep.
Everybody
I was
needs
gonna
to be
say
on
Twitter.
Twitter.
Yeah, if you're gonna be a
Everybody,
content creator, you need to be on Twitter. I'm telling you,
uh,
Twitter is will work magic. Um,
yeah.
a lot of
um,
times, especially.
oh, Twitter, like, Twitter has gotten me connections to people that I did not even imagine like remotely liked my content. And then I would come and find out that, oh, hey, they've been following me on Twitter for like months. And a lot of the times it was people who were working at the companies for the games that I was creating that were following me because they were interested in my content as people who are marketing for that company. And so, generally speaking, a lot of the times, once you gain traction in that following, those people are already aware of who you are. A lot of the companies that are out there, like Square, I know Square for a fact, Nintendo has an ambassador program, stuff like that. So, a lot of the times, once you get to a point, it's normally around 10,000 subscribers that they really start to become invested in where you can go as a channel. But once you hit that magic number of about 10,000 and you go through and you can look and see if they have influencer programs, another great thing is to look and see who's over like their social media marketing. A lot of the times they'll like have it in their Twitter bio. So you can sort of be like, oh, okay, this person like
Mm-hmm.
what works for such and such. So you can sort of stalk them a little bit. Don't go crazy.
Yeah,
Don't
no.
go crazy.
Don't tag them in every video that you put out. Don't be like, oh,
Right.
at so and so, here's my new video I just made on your content. Check me out. Like,
Right. Yeah. Do not annoy them. Do not pressure them. But if you can like sort of see like, oh, hey, they got such and such on their Twitter bio. Normally that is accompanied with an email, or you can DM them and ask them, say, hey, I have a business inquiry. Um, can I email you about something? Don't ever ask them over a Twitter DM because a lot of the times they can't reply. I
yeah.
mean, for fairly obvious reasons, they have NDA stuff. There's reasons why they can't take business stuff over a Twitter DM.
Yeah, a lot of
The
times it's
proper,
going to be
yeah,
the proper way is to send an email. And if you send the
right,
DM, always directed toward taking the conversation to the email. Yeah.
right. So but yeah, use the DM to segue. Be like, hey, do you have an email address I can contact you with? I want to cover such and such product. And yeah, and if you're like me, also make sure you have someone proofread it because oh man, I will be the first person to admit I have terrible, terrible written English. It's just awful. There is like a running joke where people say I can't read. It's mostly my friends. It hasn't like gotten out to like a lot of my fans and subscribers yet, but my friends have a running joke that I can't read because sometimes I'll make gigantic typos and no one can comprehend what I'm saying. Have someone smart proofread your stuff before you send, before you send the email. Other than that, yeah, just try to seek them out on social media. Look at their influencer programs, and a lot of the times that's an easy way to get them to come to you. And always segue any DM into email if possible,
Yeah, for
because they'll
sure.
feel more comfortable if anything,
For
which is
sure.
like the number one thing. Yeah.
Definitely creating that Twitter rapport is gonna come in handy. And sometimes they'll follow you. And like you said,
Mm,
they've already been following you. You're like, whoa, awesome. Or like they'll take notice of you. A little secret tip for you guys. I'll give you some insight into that. A lot of media departments and companies will also create what they call Twitter lists in the applications or the software that they use to manage their social platforms. They'll have another option to create private Twitter lists. And a lot of times they'll add influencers or content creators that are on their radar to that list, and they'll be watching you. but you just don't know it.
Yeah,
I know that sounds a
yeah.
little creepy when I say it that way, but but
No, it's
it
creepy, but it's so true. It's
yeah,
so true.
it just really makes you think about like, how am I carrying myself online because these people are potentially like watching me, you know?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it
And
really makes you be
that's
aware of
another thing
that.
too.
Mm-hmm.
Keep the Twitter like you don't have to be like business professional because I definitely am not whenever I'm posting on my
Mm.
Twitter. But also though you sort of want to have like it's like what do you want the world to think like when they
Yeah, like you
you
can
know
be
so don't go too
authentic.
far off, right? Yeah, you could be
Yeah.
authentic, but just
Don't be like
you might want
trashing other companies or being like, oh, unless you know if it's like a you can address problems,
mm,
obviously, but when I say address problems, not be like, wow, this game is trash. What the
yeah.
fuck? Like,
Right,
like if you're
right,
just like talking about other like studios like that and stuff, it's they're gonna be like, I don't know, because also
right.
once you do become an affiliate of these, studios or companies that you're working with, or you become a part of their programs. Also, in a way, they're really cautious about who they pick for these programs because at the end of the day, um, even though you might not be directly a part of that, they feel like it sort of influences how their brand is being portrayed online. So
Mm,
I think that's why oftentimes maybe Nintendo or some other companies have been a little weary about taking that leap to work with content creators or, influencers, however, we want to identify as online because, they're worried about that. It's like, oh, if this person goes off the deep end and says something crazy, then people are going to tag us and be like, what the hell, like this person
right.
sells, promotes your products, what are you going to do about them? I think a perfect example of that is like how Nintendo has kind of really made strides to separate themselves from being direct sponsors of the Smash community and the
Yeah,
esports
yeah,
community. And um, look at what we're dealing with now with that situation. So it kind of is like, wow, I kind of see why they've made the effort to kind of not really put themselves in there because of situations like this. But what I really respected is that even though they weren't like directly involved in the whole situation and what was happening, like not directly sponsoring it, they still put out a statement and was like, yeah, we're not okay with this, just so you guys know. So I
right.
like that they still put an effort to address that. But yeah, sometimes it's a slippery slope, and I understand why it's done, but at the same time, yeah, you're missing out on that good free market.
Yeah, it's dangerous because yeah, they are sort of putting their brand into your hands,
Mm-hmm.
which is why you do have to sort of keep some sort of professional focus on your main.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's why you get an alt,
Yeah,
if
get
that's
that all good
anonymous.
old alt account.
Get that alt. And but yeah, so you do want to keep you know, like I said, how would you want the people who created the games that you're trying to make content for? Like how do you want to express themselves yourself knowing that they're watching or they're within distance of hearing about like what you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably one of the most important things to keep in mind as a content creator.
So, covering Final Fantasy VII remake, what was that experience like? Being able to, after all the hard work and everything, getting that review code? Because I know
Mm,
for a lot of people, they want to get to that point to where they've been covering the content for so long that their content is taken seriously to where they can get that access that journalists or people in the industry have to be able to get that first access to the content, to be able to create even better content and get it out first, because that's a big thing for a lot of people, is having that access to be one of those first people to get it out, to really put focus or a highlight on your brand. So what was that experience like, being able to do that?
Oh man, that was another l- just huge validating moment in order for them to give me that early copy of the game for review purposes, of course, but just to allow me to even experience that as a content creator was one of like the biggest moments of my life. It just was phenomenal to have Square acknowledge all the coverage and all the videos that I did, and to have them acknowledge that in an official capacity was really great. I'm very thankful to them, very grateful. Um, it's it's a very great experience, and let me tell you, when you can actually get review codes and stuff like that, it gives you a massive leg up. Those the videos that you can get stuff out before the game comes out, it's just like, oh man, that's that's huge. And also just the cool factor of being able to play something before all your friends can, and that also makes you feel just
I know,
like,
I was looking
makes you
at you
feel
like,
cool.
dang, like, look, going and signing in on PlayStation and seeing playing Final Fantasy VII Remake like a week before. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, it feels good because everyone's eyeing you with those jealous eyes, and you're just sitting there like, oh,
I'm
you
chilling.
jelly. But yeah, it feels really good too. And once you're able to get that first code,
Mm-hmm.
normally at that point you have pretty good relations with that company, and
Mm-hmm.
so getting the next code is usually super easy, especially if it's from
Oh
the same
yeah.
company.
Especially if you've
Um,
already done the content, then it's like that first one makes it smooth sailing from there on out. Yeah, for sure.
right. And then, especially too, when you actually want to start diversifying your content and working with other companies too,
Mm-hmm.
they can see that this other company trusted you enough to give you the review code and that you carried out what you're supposed to do. As yeah,
That's another fact I want to mention is you
mhm,
get the review codes and you get the early content, but that's time to work too. What a lot of people have to realize, don't play around with that trust because
mm,
once you get it, it can be taken away. So it's
right,
like you have to do your part too. So if you really want it, you also got to keep doing the work.
right. You don't want to break your NDA,
Mm-hmm.
uh, or do anything like that to try to look cool in front of your friends, because you're gonna look stupid whenever whenever you don't get codes and stuff anymore. So keep your mouth shut and don't do anything that they don't want you to do. Read their terms and conditions and make sure that you abide by them to the fullest, and even
Mm-hmm.
beyond, honestly. Because again, the trust that those companies have in you is basically your gateway to be able to further your career as a content creator. So if you're serious about doing this and someone gives you that opportunity, you respect it like it's your life,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And
Not even
so
just with games, like if you're in the movies and, film content area or,
oh yeah,
whether you want to be a beauty blogger or, anything that companies give you first access to and they trust you with. Like, yeah, those NDAs are a very important thing. Read it, understand it so that you don't slip up because it can be hard. Sometimes you won't get it back, if you end up
yeah.
messing up.
Right. And once and the worst thing too is that once you get sort of blacklisted, again, how we talked about companies noticing you in the positive light when you do your review and it gets out successfully and you can point to it in your further business emails about, hey, well, this is a review I did of such and such. Well, when you uh, break your NDA or you do something like that, then you become blacklisted, and then and then again they can find out, well, hey, this influencer did this and this to that company, and that's how you get on the wrong side of things, right?
Hmm.
So it works both ways. So uh, do read basically, do your homework.
So we've gotten into the content creation and working with the brands, and how does one find the visual appeal when it comes to their content? Do you feel that it's very important? Well, I feel personally it's important to have a clear direction as far as where you're taking your brand in all aspects, and including visually, how you're setting up your brand. I know you really play off, your logo plays off the Final Fantasy style, and with everything is even your brand logos are centered around every aspect of Final Fantasy. So, do you feel like that brand imagery is another area of content creation that some people really overlook at times?
Oh yeah, there is sort of this weird dualistic way that I feel like there's like two basic ways that I feel like people sort of mess this up. The first way is that they never pay attention to any other branding, or they never have any cohesion with their branding, and then they just kind of just put stuff out, and then it never it doesn't mesh. And then the other thing that I see a lot of people doing is that they care so much about the branding and the imagery that they never actually make the content. And those are the two paradigms that I see everybody stuck in. And so a lot of people who they get to a point of where they have tens or thousands of subscribers, excuse me,
Hmm.
but then they still have like this old jank looking logos and stuff like that. So you do need to reinvest at some point into it. There's plenty of local artists, or not even local. There's plenty of artists on the internet that would love to help you, and probably could do so for very reasonable prices too, that are within your budget, and they will make your channel stand out so much more. When you first start, though, you don't need to be completely obsessed with branding. If you can get a decent looking logo, that's fine. You
Yeah.
creating content is like the most important part, and then the branding itself and the refinement of that branding is like a natural evolution of what happens as you continue to create content and really discover like what that brand is yourself. Because I think when you make that first video, you really don't know what that brand is yourself. You're kind of starting, you're taking that baby steps. And then after you've made like 10 or 20 videos, you feel very grounded and you know what your content is. And then that's when you sort of become very serious about your branding and your logos and how you do your videos, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that's another thing is people, will try to do it all at the beginning,
Mm,
and then you'll get
right.
overwhelmed, and then you're just like, oh well, I don't want to do this anymore, and then you fall off, and there's no consistency because you're feeling overwhelmed. So I think, yeah, that's a really valid point, is to just really start off small at first. Like everything doesn't have to be seamless branding, but like you said, if you can start getting a semi decent cover, you know, on your
Right.
profile, a semi decent icon, and just kind of go from there at the beginning, and then you can slowly mold into having like the channel intro and outro, and kind of having all that. I know YouTube makes it very easy now to kind of just add annotations and things like that to your videos, so that you don't really
Mm,
have to have the opening and end graph like right away. You can just kind of do that and go from there, and build it up. But yeah, like definitely starting out small is a good piece of advice, because I feel like I felt that way in the beginning too. I'm like, everything has to be perfect and have to do this right
mm,
away. And then I'm like, okay, I'm overwhelmed. Now I don't want to do anything. And like we said before, it's like definitely finding out what you want to focus on your content is important, because it's like, oh, I'm just gonna do everything, and then there's no cohesion and things start to kind of get crazy. So
right.
I think that was
Yeah.
and it takes time. Like you don't have to figure it all out at once. If you don't have to like make that video right away. I know like some people are like, oh, you want to start YouTube, just do it, just go, just press record and put the video up. And I'm like,
Right.
I don't know, I feel like that's kind of dangerous advice to be giving to someone, to just say, oh, just start, like, because like no one, I feel like maybe that's just a perfectionist in me, but I'm like, I don't want to start something without having a plan though, because then that's how you fall off too. Like you're like, oh, they said to just go do it, so I'm just doing it, and then you're like, ah, it's
Right.
not working, I'm mad, and then you just stop. So I think
Yeah.
like taking that time to just kind of take maybe like a couple weeks or something to say, okay, what do I want to focus on? What do I want to talk about? What do I want my channel to look like? What audience am I trying to bring in? I think those are important first steps to take. So then you
Mm.
don't get to that point where you just want to give up because you're so overwhelmed and you don't want to do it anymore. And to go into that too, like you start and then you form your communities. I think that's also important to really think about what type of audience you want to draw in and how do you want your community to look like. So I know you said you also manage a Facebook group as well, the Ultima Weapons, and that's what you call the community that watches your videos. Where did that start to form? Did you start making the videos first and then create the Facebook group and then they all just kind of came in, or did it all just kind of like flow seamlessly to where people just started joining the group and that added to reach with your videos as well, I'm sure.
So there's basically like a cycle that this all like works through. I created Ultima around the same time that I created my YouTube channel. The reason I went with the Facebook group as opposed to a Facebook page, although I do have a Facebook page that I also continuously maintain, but I decided to also have a group and put a bigger focus on the group than I did the page, because I realized that having a group, the first thing is I don't really have to worry about reach.
Yeah.
With a group, there's no fumbling around with Facebook reach or anything like that. If I post something in the group, first of all, everyone who has me added as a friend, which is I think I'm like friends with at least 700 of the 12,000 people that are in there. So at least 700 people see my post right away, and of that 700, I'm sure like at least like 10% will react to my post. And so basically anything that I post gets pushed up to the top, gets pushed up to everyone's feed, and so I instantly reach an optimal amount of my subscribers who come in from YouTube. That's another thing too, is that while I was growing the Facebook page, the way that I grew the Facebook page,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of every videos, I would be like, um, and if you really love Final Fantasy, be sure to check out my Facebook group, Ultima, Square Enix plus JRPGs, blah, 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 blah. And then I would do that at the end of my videos, which, by the way, your videos are prime real estate for advertising. Think about it. As sponsors want to buy placements in your videos to put their products, I mean, even Google AdSense is basically an automation for sponsors buying a pre-roll ad, right? So then you can use your video as advertisement for yourself and for your own products. And sure enough, what I do, I used my enroll as a sponsor myself for my Facebook group. So I put my Facebook group at the end of all my videos. I said, hey, go check out my Facebook group. So what they do, go to the description, click the Facebook group. And so as my channel grew, the Facebook group would also grow. And so the channel right now is at like 71,000 subscribers. And then the Facebook group is at 12,300, something like that.
Wow.
And so a lot of people would discover the group purely through Facebook's algorithms too, because Facebook tries to recommend groups for you to join.
Mm-hmm.
So some people would actually find the group and then find the channel
Oh,
and
wow.
then find the Discord, right? And so, like I said, there's a cycle here that's going. And so basically, all you had to do was discover something I was doing on one platform, and you discover everything I was doing on all platforms because they link into each other. And then with the group, anytime that you go to my group, you'll see my latest video pinned to the top. And so even if you aren't keeping up with YouTube, even if YouTube's notifications don't reach you, if you see something from the group and you click on the group, the first thing you're always going to see, even if you click on another post, it'll actually show you my pinned post before it like scrolls down and shows you what's going on. So you actually see my latest video regardless of if you like were even trying to. Like it's there. Like I force it into your face. And so no matter like what avenue you go to, you're always gonna see my latest video. So um, doing a group to me was probably the greatest decision that I ever made as a content creator because again, I had that cycle going. I don't know if the group is doing groups is necessarily the best thing for everybody, but it certainly worked for me. And another thing about groups as opposed to pages and anything else too is that people are constantly interacting with the community even when I'm not necessarily present. So there's contributors, like top contributors, who post in Ultima like 20 times a day. And so it always feels like the community is alive even without you having to necessarily be there.
Mm-hmm.
So um, the group and the channel were twins basically, and like I said, they just feed off of each other.
That's awesome to hear. And yeah, like you said, you have to be your biggest cheerleader. Like, don't be afraid to promo your videos. Like, I'm not talking about go on other people's YouTube channels and be like, "Hey guys, watch my video," and somebody else's like
No,
video
no.
in their comments. No. But like promoting yourself on your platforms, like don't be afraid to post your new video on your Twitter or something. Even if you feel like nobody's watching, still always be your biggest cheerleader because you'll never know, like it can blossom into something crazy, like you have to
Mm,
be willing to, advertise yourself and know what your content is about, because if someone asks you, oh, well, you're on YouTube, what kind of content do you make, and you don't know, you're like, well, I don't know. Like I always this is one piece of advice that I give is have your little synopsis of what it is that you do, so that whenever somebody asks, you can just flip it on like nothing.
mm.
Hi, I'm so and so, and I make content surrounding blah 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 blah. Like your little promo spiel, because that's gonna come in
Elevator
handy.
pitch.
Yeah, your pitch. Yeah, because that's gonna come in handy, especially when you're at public events. Like at E3 or whatever, and you're trying to talk to companies and they want to know about you, and you only have that short amount of time to be like, this is what I'm about. So always have your pitch ready for sure. So
Yeah.
you've made the content, you have your community. What made you feel like I can do this full time? I can quit my job and I can go in and just do this.
Oh man. So at first, when I first started, I kind of said, wouldn't it be great if I was monetized and I was able to make like an extra $200 or $300 a month? That was sort of like where I was going. I was like, man, I'll make like 4 or 5 videos a month, and then of those 4 or 5 videos, I'll make a couple hundred extra bucks, and then that's gonna like be totally awesome because on top of working, that's gonna take care of some of the bills, and then I'll really be like self-sufficient. It's like giving myself a raise, basically. That's what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's what happened. At first, I would make like a couple $100 extra, and that was great. And it felt good. It felt empowering. And then as time went on, people started to consume the videos about as fast as I can make them. And then at that point, that 3-digit number a month turned into a 4-digit number a month. And I was like, oh, okay, this is
Mm.
pretty good. Now I'm really sitting comfortable between doing this and my job. But at that point, because people were consuming it as fast as I could make it, what ended up happening is that I felt an obligation to make as many videos as possible. Why wouldn't you want to grow? If you have that type of momentum, why wouldn't you want to grow, capitalize on it, and do all the other stuff, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's this thing called sleep, apparently, that human beings need. And I ran into a wall with that real fast. And so I was going into work every day, and I'm talking about my under eyes were purple. Like
Wow.
I had to actually put concealer on
Wow.
my under eyes. Yeah, I'm not even joking. I had to put concealer on my under eyes because people thought I wasn't healthy. People were like, "Are you okay?"
Oh no.
Yeah, people were like worried about me,
It's
right?
like
And so
when
that
people
was
start bringing you aside, like, hey, are you
yeah.
okay? What's going on?
Yeah. And it's like I felt, I don't want to say I felt good because I felt like crap physically, but in my
Yeah.
head I felt driven. I was like, yeah, dude, I feel great. Like I'm ready. Like I'm so ready. And but yeah, like my under eyes were purple, and I was almost like I kind of like had like some premature like aging lines like around my eyes, and they went
Mm.
away now after I slept. But this is how hard I was pushing at one point from when I started to hit toward that 4-digit number monthly, and I was like, oh, okay. And then at some point, because I was a pharmacy technician, which by the way, most underpaid, undervalued job in America. It's just
Mm-hmm.
unbelievable. And here I was, and I would make a video in about the same amount of time I would spend working, and then I would make more money on the video. Sometimes I'd spend less amount of hours than I did working, and I'd make a video, and I'd make just as much, if not more money. And so I would look at my miserable job, and I said, okay, if I make X amount consistently, then I'm just quitting my job. Because why not? Because this isn't going anywhere. And sure enough, it hit that point, and yeah, I never looked back. And it's been almost, oh man, it's almost going on 2 years soon enough. Well, yeah, it'll be 2 years not before long.
I can't
Yeah.
believe it's already been
So
that long.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. It's like we're going on like a little over a year and a half now. So yeah, and I'm super comfortable. I'm fed. I have a roof over my head. I'm not dying. I mean, I make about as much or more as I did when I had a job doing that, and I'm way happier, and I sleep. So,
Sleep is important. That's
oh man,
crazy though. But that's the
yeah,
right way to do it though. You started and you had a plan and you did that while, you had your job at the same time. And then when you felt you were ready, you made the push. And I
yeah.
think that's the best way to go, in all honesty, because I know it can be scary for some people. Did you feel a little scared when you took that leap?
Oh man, so it's actually funny. The day I quit my job, actually, it was just because I was angry because they scheduled me on a weekend, and I told them I don't want to work weekends anymore. And I just actually, I totally, in full honesty, I just quit because I was mad that day. Um, I just told them this is my 2 weeks and I'm done. And then after that 2 weeks, I was kind of like, oh, what did I do?
Sometimes
I was like, what
that
did I
that
do?
happens though. Like some people think it's like a magical moment where you're like, I planned this and here's my 2 weeks and I'm setting off to sail on my new venture. Bye everybody. No, sometimes you just walk in and be like, man, this job, I'm out of here. Bye.
Right. No, that's usually how it happens, right? Because there's almost, if you're a good employee, there's almost this sense of guilt associated like with showing up and helping your coworkers and making sure that things go smoothly, especially when you were in a position like I was, where I was very much a senior employee. I ran I ran everything around there, and I was helping everybody involved. And so for me to withdraw and not to brag about this was a huge value loss for that company, right?
Hmm.
And once you've invested so much time in them, you sort of feel like a personal investment with making things go right. And so, honestly, I had been contemplating it for weeks to months before that. But for some reason, when I saw that I was going to work that weekend, when I had already worked, like 7 years worth of weekends up to that point.
It's like
That's
the
how
Kill
long I had
Bill
been with them.
moment.
Yeah, and I told them that I've been here. I've been here too long to be scheduled for weekends, and then they do it again to me. And so it was honestly kind of petty for me to just quit over that, but it made me snap. And so, um, but in my head though too, I hadn't like lost my mind. It was just more like I thought that I should take advantage of my current emotional state and do something difficult that I wouldn't do in my leveled emotional state. So I was like, I'll just take advantage of me being angry right now and use that anger to just go in there and tell them I quit. And so and so that's what I did. I was like, I'm done. This is the last day. Well, not the last day. I was like, this is my 2 weeks. I'm out of here. And so I did that, and then I went home. And then I was like, man, what did I do? I was like, what did I do? I was like, I quit my job. There's no going back. And then I think that month after too was kind of a rough spot because it was just like a creative dry point for me, which you'll have as a content creator, especially full time, where you go through like these creative blocks where you just can't really produce anything. But
Man.
thankfully, that April, the month prior, um, I was just on fire. And then from there, everything just really took off. And man, I was able to pay all my bills, make about the same amount of money. And yeah,
Nah, that's crazy. Cuz
yeah,
like that's a funny story though in some ways cuz people always expect it to be like moments that you prep for. But sometimes it takes little situations like that to just be like a spur of the moment decision where you're like, I'm done, and then you're like, oh shit.
yeah,
So that's good
and
to hear though, because I think that that really kind of puts it into perspective that sometimes it's not always like a planned decision at that moment that you choose to do that. Sometimes it sparks from certain situations to where it pushes you to just be like, you know what, I'm gonna do this.
all right, and if you look back at it too, if you go all the way back to me being in college, quit college out of impulsivity, and then started YouTube out of impulsivity, quit my job out of impulsivity, and became a full-time content creator. I don't recommend impulsivity. But sometimes the things that can result out of just saying like, hey, I'm gonna do it, can oftentimes lead to something. You never know
Hmm.
exactly what it's going to lead to. But if you're not happy where you are, you're not going to get happy being there. That's one thing I
Mm.
can tell you for a
Ah,
fact.
that is so important. Y'all hear
Yeah.
that? Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna take that piece of
Um,
advice myself.
yeah. You aren't gonna get happy at your job if you're not, or doing what you do at life. So you need to do something radical to shift from where you're at.
Mm.
It's the only way.
Those are profound words right there, my friend. Well, where can everyone find you, Ryan?
On YouTube, you can find me youtube.com/the night sky prince. On Twitter, you can find me on night sky prince underscore because somebody took the night sky prince. I don't know who you are. One day I will find you and you don't want to know what I'm going to do. Or you can also find me through my Facebook group, Ultima semicolon Square Enix plus JRPGs. I almost had a memory lapse there. Ultima Square Enix plus JRPGs is where you can find me. Uh, Either of those three, best place to see all my latest content.
And I will include all of those links in the description. And I appreciate you so much for taking the time to speak with me and my audience and give a little insight into content creation and your journey. I'm expecting even bigger things from you. This is only the beginning for you. I mean, interviewing the voice actors of Final Fantasy VII Remake, all of that. Like, you are doing big things, my dude. Like, I'm excited to watch your journey, and I hope that anyone listening will take a look at Ryan's videos because he has some prime content that I think everyone would enjoy. But yes, so thank you so much for listening and watching for those who are watching on YouTube. And as always, my links are in the description below. You can follow me on all social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that under Pretty Brown and Nerdy. And I will see you guys on the next Nerd Talk.